It is Shabdrung an annual religious holiday. Thousands of people from all walks of life are paying their respects to Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel. 2016 marks the 400th year of his arrival in Bhutan. But who was Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel? And why do the Bhutanese still revere him after 4 centuries?
Pena dukbarim boche, tuchini Ngawang Namgyel. Cho, ngachara chulu ki chojen tsamchi member. Dugye kapki, chapsi ki nedang dandelbe tole. Tsachiwi chul, dunchen kaad, sumde chinna dudye, tengagi shuni in. De tambara, ngachara dugye kapdi, lotongta lesa chigi kongle, Torong men baase, ming tokdi yumidi, tele yugi minglu dugyul, nangi migi minglu dugbaase, te ming tepe tokde asudu, tele tunchin nipalu, gekap, rangwa rangzingi ngotak, lamlu suldiile, tele sumpa, gekap rangwa rangzingi tele besa jiru. Lamlu suge telebesa juru, kujuru meba, yuringdo nyesumidi, aniyamde jetaji.
Ngawang Namgyel was born in 1594 in Druk Sewa, Zhabdrung in the Tsang region of Tibet. His father, Mepham Tembinyema, was the 15th Prince Abbot of Ralung, and his mother, Sonam Pelgi Puti, was a member of an aristocratic Geluk family. He is considered to be an emanation of Avalokiteshvara, the Buddha of infinite compassion.
Ngawang Namgyel de mapa para tuba ngomagi tseda tudinga chagi zuma surura tangache ducha gi wanalu sunsubigi de da tubigi thurap yarama rambajin to chinsi chishuni tanizumba wachin de totonga chara thurap phusum choba se yongtalu tebe sundi de naluba wachin tambo tambora da thurap tambo di phabo jitinwachu judu le tigi shishida di thurap nibodi de shambala yiga khamnalu rizim pimakarbugi kewashin andu le thurap sumbodi de begiga khamnalu chigil sunsegamolu chendu de thurap jibadi de jagara sahogi yunalu kinche shiwa chose chenadu de thurap mungabadi doru jagara khachigi yunalu penche narotaba de chenadu thurap jubadi de begiga khamnalu de chuji dayu jenu de chuji tabol haji se shuyi de chuji gamoba se shuyi de ani chuji tabol 하지기 구루 전나도 들레테 좀베 통잡 듬바디 추주 도이긴 뭐 쌈바저레 벤데루바 데 고기 구루 전나도 들레 통잡 개바디 또 샤충면브라게 신함나로 데 자주 선바 나와 두트 선바심이 꾸이게 와지디 전도 들레 통잡 구바디 데 도로테 베기가 함나로 데 경화지 데 결과균가 변주로서 되게 깨워 전나도 들레 통잡 주바디 도로테 베기게 함나라 이메 자유기게 비세 고마치기 잡았을 때 비준나도 데 통합 주지바디 긴케페 마카르보 긴케 나원르보세 슈이 긴케페 마카르보세 아니게 통합 비준나도 데 통합 주니바디 데 우힙달로 당아치게 잡고 나원남기에 데 구충나도세 아니 아치게 나원남기 순수 통합 주니데 지데를 맞은도 아니고 준디.
Many auspicious signs and visions occurred during the birth of Ngawang Namgyel.
야, 베기게 함나 베기 두기리 마저게 데 춤다는식이 리다. 데 별로 잘리면 베기 신이다 메토기리. 데 별로 메미게 마저게 두게 함나 베기 자다 추추드스 차차라. 데 별로 휘 자다 메토드스 군들로게 안에서 가랑 마저게 추중수마다 내다지드스기 야 군들로 짜디베 데 마음번으로 거라 딜루파비츠로 두게 함나 준세 데 론틴 야 규모쇼가 자쪽에 따스는 좀 dāni bī yuisi shūna.
Ngawang Namgyel has a peaceful upbringing and starts his monastic education tutored by his father, Tembe Nyima, and his grandfather, Mepham Chogyal. At the age of 8, he receives his lay Buddhist vows from his grandfather, who also names him Ngawang Jigmi Drakpa Chole Nambar Gelwi Pel Zangpo. He also studies under a teacher, Lawang Lode. Ngawang Namgyel is brilliant in his studies and does very well in whatever he pursues. In his teens, he sees a recurrent dream of a raven flying him to a distant land, into a place with a temple near a river with a wooden bridge over it. The Druk Ralung monastic estate is one of the principal seats of the Drukpa Kaju school, a sect founded by Yishe Doji, popularly known as Tsangpa Gyare. During that era, the Drukpa Kaju school has the largest number of followers among all the Himalayan Buddhist schools, so much so that a popular adage was coined to illustrate it.
Zamni mishi druba, tele dushe tangbo, te tangchi truftopse, lapsulu chunubola, the andi de pelun drubi temba digi, tele de nam sembe chapsubilu jumewa. The andi bende digi, tuse andi ginalo, tele de pelun drubi temba digi shube chapjoyangale, zambulingi michaka pelun druba be yasi se. Tele mipchaka digi naanale, tele pchaka tangbo yuchubi shubi semewa. Te digi naandale pchakadi, tele truftobi inse. The andi bebodolo pelun drubi temba digi, naame sembe chabijoyigi, pitam chetoro, te pelun drubi temba digi, amchiga chapchisi sizo mosuba, chagyubi nilam chopgi, chinsena kula chapsoyi ise. The andi de te tuyuru miru pardru se sumbi pshijoshina, tele naame sembe tashabjoyi rujimbe se shunina.
Ngawang Namgyel becomes the 16th Prince Abbot of Druk Ralung at the age of 13. A Sakya hierarch, Sonam Wangpo, presides over the enthronement and confers upon him the religious title of the Shabdrung, which means the divine at whose feet one submits. By then, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel is also recognized as the reincarnation of Kinken Pema Karpo, who is perhaps the greatest Drukpa Kaju scholar of all time. However, this recognition eventually provokes a conflict with the powerful ruler of the land, Pinso Namgyel. The Tsang Desi supports another candidate, Paksam Wangpo. Paksam Wangpo is the son of Chungipelop, a close associate of the Tsang Desi. To resolve the dispute, the Tsang Desi invites the Shabdrung to his palace. Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel is just 20 years old. He is young, uncompromising, and proud. The Tsang Desi is 26 at the time. And so their young blood takes over, and the only face-to-face encounter between the two does not bear any positive outcome. When the Shabdrung returns to Ralung, an incident occurs along the way that takes the conflict to the point of no return.
What really happened that day was Shabdrung was on his way to one of his monastic estate, and the visit and the timing coincided in such a way where Pautsula Jatso was also rushing to meet the 6th Shamarpa, Shikumachu. Then, as it would have it, Shabdrung was already aboard a boat, if we may say so, when Pautsula Jatso arrived. But then, the followers of Pautsula Jatso perhaps thought that their masters should have precedence over who should ride that transport over Chumotsangpo. So the issue was about social status. It was about religious eminence. And they manhandled Shabdrung out of the boat, which obviously was taken as a serious offense by followers of Shabdrung. So the only way to resolve the issue was through certain show of masculine power, whereby I think 2 or 3 followers of Tsula Paujatso were stabbed to death.
Some days after the incident, the Tsang Desi demands compensation from the Shabdrung for the deaths. Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel refuses to take responsibility and requests a fair inquiry into the incident. The Tsang ruler instead reprimands the Shabdrung and demands all the relics of Ralung, including the Rangjung Kasapani. He warns that failing to do so would result in the Shabdrung standing trial for the deaths. In response, the Shabdrung invokes the guardian deities and warns that the Tsang Desi would soon face the wrath of the protecting deities such as Mahakala. The wrath of the deities appears to have taken its toll when the Chengi Penlop and some of his associates die under sudden and mysterious circumstances. The Tsangpa court attributes the deaths to the occult power of the Shabdrung. To prevent him from causing more harm, the Tsang Desi decides to eliminate him once and for all. But the Shabdrung comes to know of this decision. He has two alternatives, either to stay in Ralung and fight or flee. The Shabdrung, being young and proud, is perhaps determined to stay and fight. But his father, Tembinyama, tells him that he should rather follow his destiny to the southern land. Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel decides to seek a final divination from the Rangjung Kasapani and decides to accept its outcome. The divination from Rangjung Kasapani and the messages from the guardian deities are clear. Shabdrung's destiny is in Homen Kaji. Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel spends his last day in Ralung, praying in the main altar room of the Ralung monastery. Meanwhile, his father, Tembinyama, packs all the important relics, including the Rangjung Kasapani, to be sent with his son. And when darkness falls, the Shabdrung leaves Ralung accompanied by some 30 monks and horsemen. It takes the Shabdrung and his entourage just 2 days to reach the border at Wakila near Laya in northern Bhutan. But a heavy snowfall strands the entourage for a few days. It is said that one morning a fox appears and shows the way through the snow. Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel enters Bhutan through Laya. The year is 1616 AD. The year of the fire dragon as per the lunar calendar. Shabdrung is only 23 years old at the time.
The Laya Lungulu Chanola, the Lungulu Chemekablo, the La Lungumisezuki, the Shabdrung Rimuchilo, the Chemiki, the Katikaso Zumchibe, the Marchi Lomam Mingi Loto, the Temsemidi, the Tambara Trainsimela, the Dibor Tendibe, the Namasamangarchira, Tata Tendilation, Imese Shabdukoragi. Tume namale tindigi darna bayanga chergi dugya khabgi masul lamluzam gi tenalo nyamara temtiza se tham suyimi yani imesishunila delebe shabdu lungulebe de laylo chendola de laylo chemda layagi de jinda debachin de ta tongra simen tenalo de da darna bachin de tongra haptri se ye de tenalo khongge jinda beadigibe de shabdu tu nyedibe de sha takpachi laylo junola.
From Laya, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel travels towards Gasa. He rests for the night at a place that is today known as Koina. Next day, he reaches Gasa where he stays for a week. For the hospitality offered to him, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel gifts them with a pair of shoes, a tsatsa and a statue.
그 거기에 나한테 주디베 텔레텔롬이야 플라가루 합티시주 됐습니다.
The Shabdrung also visits the Wopso Dzong. Back in those days, the Wopso Lams were patrons of Druk Ralung. Tenzin Drugel, who later becomes the first secular head of unified Bhutan and who was also a student of Shabdrung, came from this family. After a couple of days in Wopso and Gasa, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel resumes his journey, traveling through Tamji, another place that is named after his visit. From Tamji, he heads towards Lingji before descending towards the Thimpu Valley. When he reaches Pangrizampa, he remembers this place from his recurrent dream as a child of a raven flying him here. The temple besides the river, with a wooden bridge over it, is exactly the way he saw it in his dream. He spent some time at Pangrizampa performing rituals and ceremonies, thanking the protecting deities for the safe exit from Ralung. At Pangrizampa, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel also visits the Dichipu temple. He conducts ceremonies at the Nekang, which was founded by his ancestor Jamyang Kyunga Singhi, the 6th Prince Abbot of Ralung. In Thimpu, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel is received by the patron families of the Wang Valley and by the descendants of Drukpa Khinle and Phaju Dugom Shipo. From Thimpu, he travels to Paro, where the Hungrel and Zarchin families receive him in great reverence. These two families, together with the Wopso family of Gasa, have always been the patrons of Druk Ralung. The Shabdrung stays in Druk Chuding, a temple founded by his great-great-grandfather, Ngawang Chogyel. During his long stay in Paro, he receives a letter from the Tsang Desi stating that his estate in Ralung has been confiscated. The Shabdrung is told to return with the Rangjung Kasapani and surrender himself. As expected, the Shabdrung does not heed to the order, following which the Tsangpa ruler sends his armies to capture him. The Shabdrung escapes to Hungrel Dzong and then further uphill to Drela Dzong. At Drela Dzong, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel has a vision where the guardian deity Mahakala offers the entire southern land to him and even ensures a total victory over all invading forces. The Zarchin Chöje and the Hungrel family raise a local militia and a full-scale battle ensues.
Shabdrung pigi ma ten tangbadi umdamola. Ani ma lokta ani paparu sondina ani mchikali salama ani gadi ani na chiji pupinchani lo na dojige semecha konuchu. The compensani is a really boom the Judani charity total venom semi and chachishu. But the animat in Yakalusa top shim the dish of Dugi and Kashudi no major.
The war, blood, and deaths completely shock the Shabdrung. He feels entirely responsible for all the troubles inflicted on his hosts. When he reaches Salona, he even contemplates renouncing everything and leading an hermetic life just like Jitsin Milarepa. In total desperation, he blows his ritual horn 3 times in the direction of Ralung and shouts out for his ancestors, calling them and lamenting about the difficulty in fulfilling his destiny. Tired and cold, he falls asleep. In his dream, 4 Dakinis appear and tell him that he is special, more special than all the great personalities to be born in his family, and that he has a sacred duty to consolidate the Drukpa Kaju tradition in the southern land. The Shabdrung awakens from the dream and resolves to follow his predestined path. He travels back to Thimphu and then moves to the Shah Valley in present-day Wangdipodang. When he reaches Shah Wache, he gets the news that the invading forces of the Tsang Desi have been repelled. A great celebration follows. After many months in Shah, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel goes into a solitary retreat at Tango, a place which is offered to him by his relative, Tsewang Tenzin, the great-grandson of Drukpa Künle. Here, among other things, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel goes into serious introspection, trying to really understand himself and who he is. At the end of his retreat at Tango, he makes the famous proclamation known as the Nga Chuduma, the 16 eyes, which then becomes his official seal.
다코라기 대사다 ngajudu semeje sabrim bachi ngagelu je ngataxi sunsumembe koragi jenlu delete ichigi tole karapa debi nyubachi yoga junga sewegi tesume 먹어봐 티르바리 되나까지면서 진달래 대응자래 ngajudu 먹였으면 제니유 저동이 콜레죠 왕왕하니 근자서 옆에는 두배된가 ngani dupo 진am 좀서 다 dordu와진 인텔레 데펜덴트 베텐지야 nga인 웅이 콜레죠 nga인 링닐로 캐봐야 nga인 쩨베 투톱게 다보야 nga인 좀베 왕추투봐야 nga인 텔레데 가지 텔레베제베서 지로 텔레데 콜로 메마습다 태솜다 똑바 잘레라 미 대천염기 다보 가제베르 베습지 이 이스과라기 대세게 데뷔 중도.
In 1619, his father Tembinyama passes away in Tibet. The Shabdrung makes arrangements to smuggle his body to Bhutan. A year later, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel undertakes his first major construction, which is to build a temple in Cheri. The main purpose of the temple is to house the remains of his father. The Shabdrung brings 5 artisans from Nepal to work on a Kudung Chutin to keep the remains of his father. Meanwhile, his arch-rival, the Tsang ruler, Pinso Namgyel, passes away in 1621 in the midst of a civil war with the Gelugpas and the Mongol forces. The Tsangpa court attributes the death to Shabdrung's occult powers and gathers thousands of magicians to take revenge on the Shabdrung. The result is an earthquake in Tango. The Shabdrung is meditating at the time when the quake hits Tango and a boulder rolls down over his head, but instead of falling on him, the boulder miraculously hangs over his head. It is attributed to Shabdrung's powers. 2 years later, when the Cheri complex is complete, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel establishes the first monastic body with 30 monks.
Temaba belundu bi chudi hema phaji dugum jibu genam chinu iru shabdu khorgi kablo ta gutam bade katele chugoni na se thujina telen thudam ta badu su rumba shindu shui kapsulo ta chiri chuba chin telen mangban no longa chi dugya khabdin no belundu bi chugin digi yuren merane ni se thusam jishina shabdu rum chi gi gyolo gi dede gutam ta ma gyolo sumchube tenga chi chiri lu chuna no se shunila.
After completing the first temple at Cheri, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel enters into a 3-year meditation retreat to continue his religious education. The year is 1623, and the Shabdrung is 28 years old. Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel is a very disciplined practitioner. Besides the other rituals and requirements, he does 6,000 prostrations every day. When he completes his retreat at the age of 32, His long, unattended hair and beard comes to represent the image of the Shabdrung that artists of the era have immortalized. Thousands of followers travel to receive his blessings and to celebrate his achievement. He continues to live in Cherry, where the retreat seems to have grounded him more into the Dharma, that at one point of time he even contemplates returning for a longer retreat. Once again, he seeks the divinations and directions from his forefathers and guardian deities. The messages are very clear. He should start with what he is destined to do: build the nation of Pelden Drukpa. Shabdrung follows the divine messages, and as the first move towards establishing his authority over the southern lands, he issues a decree calling for all humans and non-humans, and even gods and deities, to heed to his words thereafter.
It was a powerfully symbolic act, because normally you just would have a script as a proclamation, send emissaries around the country or around the region which would constitute a country later. But what he did that. But what he also did was he had his emissaries, ambassadors so to say, or political envoys, directed to forests, mountains, lakes, cliffs, where non-human spirits, or we may call the 8 classes of spirits, reside. And people wondered, how would someone deliver an edict or a proclamation to non-humans? I just can't give it to you. Like, it isn't that. But the symbolism he built in the act was that there would be a basket of ritual thomas, there would be some pills wrapped in the kashu with a khada, and then his envoys were asked to immerse this in water bodies like lakes. His envoys were instructed to drill hole into cliffs or into dig holes into mountains and deliver them, or rather put them there and cover them. And it was a symbolic act of delivering the kashus and the messages.
The decree was a great strategy. The local people, who were both superstitious and practicing nature worship, were amazed at a man who could command not just human beings, but also gods and deities. They began to rally behind him. It becomes clear that Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel is not only a religious figure, but also a compassionate and visionary leader and a master tactician. In 1627, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel welcomes 2 visiting Portuguese missionaries, Father Casella and Father Cabral, making them the first Westerners to visit the country. The Jesuit priests are on their way to Tibet and probably had in their possession a map which mistakenly showed Bhutan covering much of Tibet. The visit by the Jesuit priests is important for the written letters and reports sent by them to their headquarters in Pondicherry, India. Those reports provide some rare insights into the persona of Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel. According to them, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel was a very charismatic and progressive leader who gave freedom for people to choose how they wanted to lead their lives. He was both the king and the highest lama in the land. The Shabdrung did not extol any taxes, and the small state institution survived on voluntary contributions from his subjects. He led a simple life, surviving on milk and vegetables. The Shabdrung invites the Jesuits to stay on, but after a few months, Father Casella and Father Cabral continue their journey to Tibet. As the process of state building takes off, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel starts to think about succession plans. Buddhist conventional wisdom has it that all religious heads are chosen through reincarnation. This wasn't true in the majority of schools in Himalayan Buddhism. The Drukpa Kagyu school, founded by Tsangpa Gyare, started off with the uncle-nephew system known as Kuon, with Önre Dharma Singhi, the nephew of Tsangpa Gyare, as the first successor. But in later centuries, the position of the Prince Abbot of Drukralung became hereditary. Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel had no direct family members in Drukyul. Hence, the alternative was to produce a biological son to succeed him.
In the interest of successor to the leadership of the new state that was being established, successor to the lineage holder of the principal hierarch who was Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel himself, a successor was deemed necessary. So he takes a consort around 1626, Damche Tenzin from Changgangka Chöje, but then they have a daughter, but there was a need to have a son. So Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel takes a second consort, Ticham Gyöka Dema, and Jampel Dorji was born in Simtokazong around 1630-31. So the fact that the son would succeed the father suggests, although it is not clearly articulated elsewhere, that a kind of hereditary succession was being envisioned. Sadly, or unfortunately, history had a different story. Gyese Jampel Dorji suffers from a chronic affliction around 8 years of age, and then history evolves otherwise.
The Shabdrung also has to attend to a more pressing matter: to become a fully ordained monk so that he could receive an important teaching of Pema Karpo from his tutor Lhawang Lode. And Lhawang Lode is by then getting old and weak. In 1633, the Shabdrung gives up his plans to have another son and becomes a fully ordained monk. As for the succession, he focuses his attention on another young boy who shares his bloodline, Tenzin Rabge, the son of Tsewang Tenzin of Tango Chöje. As Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel consolidates his authority, he is also well aware of possible invasions from the north. Hence, his first concern is to protect his people and the new state. He thus undertakes the constructions of temple fortresses known in the local language as dzongs. In 1629, foundations are laid for the first dzong in Simtoka in Thimphu Valley. The architecture with a central tower and 12 corners was inspired by Gajal Monastery established by Pema Karpo in Tibet. His students and the people from the local area carry out the construction work during the day and receive his teachings in the evenings. Soon after the dzong is completed, the second invasion takes place, this time instigated by the 5 dissident lamas.
Now, when Shabdrung came to Bhutan, not everything was well, not everyone liked him, not everyone, he had a strong group of followers and patrons, but there were equally those who resented his presence, who would have been better off without him. And we categorize them as the 5 groups of Lamais sections. The sort of internal resentment mobilized by Lamkhanga and an external troop led in such a way that the invaders were able to penetrate Simtokazong and what we call lay a siege and start looting.
The Shabdrung himself escapes to present-day Jarogang in Wangdi. Here the Shabdrung is believed to have had the vision of another guardian deity, Jarog Dongchen, which perhaps led to the place being later named Jarogang. The Shabdrung gives several gifts, including religious items that can be seen even today. The only jackfruit tree in this region, said to be planted by him, also stands there to this day. Back in Simtoka, the occupation by the invading forces ends, and it is believed to be the work of the guardian deities.
In the process of looting, as we know from historical literature, some gunpowder explosion took place. And the storage of ammunition must have been massive, because if it were just 1 or 2 powder kegs, it would not have resulted in the huge destruction of Simtokazong. So a structure collapsed. Many enemy generals were killed, as much as their followers, and Shabdrung himself had by then escaped. So the saddest part of this attack is that we land up sending some hostages to Tibet. Of course, generally Bhutanese soldiers win, but Simtokazong is destroyed after 5 years, and the restoration is not done about 37 years later till the time of Chogyal Mingyur Tempak.
With the Tibetan forces vanquished again, Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel comes out stronger and with renewed confidence. If the fire accident was, as it was believed to be, the work of the divine, then the Shabdrung is convinced that he is not alone in the massive endeavor of state building. The spirits of his ancestors, the protection of deities, and the support of the local people are all solidly behind him. He travels to present-day Punakha, where he undertakes the most important project of state building, the construction of Punakha Dzong, that would go on to serve as the capital of the new state. The prophecy for the Punakha Dzong was given by none other than Guru Padmasambhava in the 8th century. In 1637, the new Dzong in Punakha is complete. It is named Bhutan Dewa Chenboi Podang, the Palace of Great Bliss. A large celebration follows, joined by people from many parts of the country. On the political front, much of Western Bhutan came under his administration. So the Shabdrung initiates the dual system of governance, delegating the secular affairs to Tenzin Drugel and religious matters to Drung Tamcho Gelsin. He also appoints Pekar Rabge as the first Dzongpen of Punakha. Shortly after Punakha, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel goes on to complete another Dzong in Wangdi, followed by one in Thimphu in Dechin Podang, thus paving the way for him to become the undisputed political and religious leader of the new nation. After securing Thimphu and Punakha Valley, Shabdrung sets out to protect Paro. Meanwhile, the first Tibetan-Mongol invasion occurs around the same time. Soon after repelling this invasion, the Hungrel family in Paro offers the 5-storied Hungrel Dzong, over which the Shabdrung starts the construction of Rimpung Dzong in 1646. Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel was also a great military strategist. He often won without fighting. He never wielded a sword. His biggest feat was in 1648, when the Tibetans and the Mongols launched what was perhaps the largest military campaign. Their mission was not just to capture him or to retrieve Rangjung Khasapani, but to occupy the whole country. Drukgyal was invaded from 3 directions. The Bhutanese were well prepared. Pazaps from Shah, Wang and Paro formed a formidable militia, but they were ordered not to engage with the invaders and instead wait or prolong the war. In Punakha, the invaders camped at Jiligang overlooking Punakha Dzong. At one point, to deceive them, Shabdrung ordered the Pazaps to file out from one gate and enter from the other, once in the morning and once in the evening. The invaders were made to believe that a large number of soldiers were stationed inside the Dzong. In Paro, the Bhutanese, led by Tenzin Drukta, launched a surprise attack one night and completely eliminated the invaders. When news of the Tibetan defeat reached Punakha, the invading soldiers and commanders went into total disarray. The warmer weather of Punakha also brought sandflies and bees that the invaders were not used to. Pelden Drukpa prevailed again. Here, in what is today the tip of the runway of Bhutan's only international airport, was the main battleground of the 2 wars. Further up the Paro Valley stands Drugel Dzong, built in 1649. Drugel means victory to the Bhutanese, and thus this Dzong stands as a testimony of those wars. And perhaps more, it is a reminder to the present generation of the countless sacrifices made by the forefathers to maintain the spirit and sovereignty of Pelden Drukpa. Another visible heritage is the Punakha Domche that was instituted after the Bhutanese victory in 1648. The highlight of Punakha Domche is the enactment of disposing the sacred Rangjung Kasapani into the Punakha River. This ceremony was in fact staged during the 1648 war to deceive the invading armies, who assumed that the Bhutanese really threw the sacred relic into the river. In 1649, when Shabdrung is 56 years old, he commissions a massive religious project to make over 11 million miniature statues of Buddha in memory of all the war victims from both sides in the series of invasions that took place. He works late into the night for months, and it soon takes a toll on him. 2 years later, in 1651, he takes a retreat into the Machilhagang of Punakha Dzong, issuing instructions that no one should disturb him. It is believed that he passed away in 1651, on the 10th day of the 3rd month. However, his death is kept a secret to avoid internal conflicts and external threats. Every ritual and every protocol and all day-to-day functions are carried out and maintained as if he were alive. After his death was officially revealed in 1707, the country entered into frequent internal turmoil until Gongsa Ogin Wangchuk became the first hereditary monarch of Bhutan in 1907. Shabdrung's unification of Bhutan was not merely a territorial expansion or subjugation of adversaries. As his domain expanded to Ha in the west and Merak in the east, Shabdrung's overall goal was to carve out an independent, sovereign nation, foster rule of law, and promote a unique national identity.
lam luksul di gekabishin kada ya madawigi te luksuji Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel zugnangdo benanga jara chui sewaji chui di sangge de changju sembe chui me kadilyu ani nga jere gekabgi netang da chituigi chudan tymbege lamsul ro maje du gekabgi kechu ha migi tom samji nawi nyem samjigi tele de ngoshi subege lamsulji da dia nga jere chugi sinnalu lapjamago sige chonnalu lapjamago magodi besejiru 최단 시디 숭델베 추게 가돌레 데실로 잡조로 펜토 시게 가돌레 출루 규바 아니람스 딜로 따디게야 라마 노안담길로 데 튜몽마 임바기 골레 데 찌고르 쇼고지 데디도 시스템.
One of the most outstanding initiatives in the field of governance was the Chaik Chenmo. In fact, the Chaik Chenmo later formed the basis of the Trimjung Chenmo, the supreme law that was formulated in 1729.
아니 자이 첨모디 쪼라 마지 되나로 또 최소된 가지기 다사 긴두기 데데스기 데 자침 좀제 송나도 나 종지 때월로 주미로 le 산에 소소다 긴두 소소 종하 소소로 봐 주미게 라모다 펜로 데스기 때 번이기를 뭐다 톱당 때 배shumë 마시고 남루디세 되나로 추디도 세슈니 데다 다른 아버님 같이 약 컴퓨터에 자침 드세 마도마도 사치와 사치 자치우비테 순디에 사주로 니마라 등아저 약합이 나기 팀 조들 안에 잡으러 무시기 자침들로 찾아বে 데베제 나도 세슈니.
Together with the physical infrastructures such as dzongs, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel also introduced the softer disciplines of art, music, embroidery, etc., known as Zorik Chusum, the 13 skills of art and craft.
So we can vividly see that he was a great artist, and the Zorichusu was first started in Bhutan during his time.
Having established a political and legal system, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel turned his attention to create a unique national identity. How could the people of Belden Drukpa be different and look different? Perhaps based on the Tibetan Chuba, it is believed that he conceived the idea of Go, the ko is to be worn by men of all social status. As for the women's dress, it was believed to have been adapted from the pagip, a dress worn by Menpas and Hlops. Ko, Kira, Kapne and Rachu are today one of the visible aspects of Bhutanese culture and society. Their uses and methods of wearing them are described in Dilam Namja, which is a secularized version of Drilam Chusum.
But what we understand by Diglam Namja today, I would interpret it as being in harmony with the Dharma. In a way, Diglam Namja is an alternative form of practice contrary to popular contemporary perception that it is an etiquette or a display of behavior and attitude shown by the subordinates to the superiors.
Because of this popular misconception, one of the most important legacies of Shabdrung is often relegated to oblivion. Dilam Chusum includes fundamental Buddhist values such as Tatamsi, integrity and commitments, and Lejumje, the wisdom of karmic effects. In other words, just solely following the social etiquette without practicing Tatamsi and Lejumje is shallow and meaningless. The tangibles such as Ko, Kira, Dzongs and festivals, and the intangibles such as patriotism, hospitality, and humility have been the pride of Bhutan as a nation and hallmarks of Bhutanese people. Through this soft power, Bhutan, which was once one of the smallest and poorest among Himalayan nations, is today the last independent Mahayana Buddhist country in the world.
마저래 개합 생각 랑징이 텔레 바와진 개합 잠링 피해가 되지 왕도도 수비기 톱슈 의미기 개합이야 남지기 듣고 희생이 오는 수도 람룩슬리 베데베세주로 로자니절리 냠주 유르조 당아지기 랑와랑 생이 태갈래 보들 중나가서 와진 보들 살레 마중 델레 추기 갖들레 보들 중나가서 와진 보줄 살레 마중배 아니 좀 마냠바 유미디 다시 찌레 가자라 되게 잘라남이 우티 올레 가자라기 전당 데도야 알리 임베 임다 아니 해마 람설짬이 되게 람설디 지점디 죄야서 브로지베서 진 병아자라랑 신기 슈죠 다도 라망 원능비기 수기삼미디 마주니 되게 가자라기 디 냠마주에 칼로 딩딩소다 저거 데토토
마저기 두기합기 미세 가라기는 서주로 대달라 마샤브르 모친 어남겔 소도로 다티 마저기 초기 카톨릭이 됐다니 슐루지기 우치빠 마숨지다 자사숨지기 루카지 징겔라 마숨지바 아니베 집집에 마시나 마폴라랑 마저기 개용기 카톨릭에 약합 용로 까진 나나메비게 잡니 집에 아니베 찍고서 슈니
Teknaragia nebe no satantau dolo, machigi dugia hamdolo, kadin chesho dira de sumi mes no stamela. Te tambara ubinguru muchi de kadiche seshunila. Te nibadi machigi dugia habi misi dugia hablo, te kadiche shu nibadi Shabdrung Ngawang Namgyel ime seshunila. Te len kadiche shu sumbadi te da onshu gyuzingi gap dus ime seshunila. Te tizumgi gap, chudingi gap, chugi gap, te hanuzumchi machin, guru muchigi benebe chingilab nami dusaya. Tete nyamjuni gi nyanga. Tele niboso dulu Shabdrung muchigi tsunamigi, tele chusu sundigi, tele jungdise 식당도 뭔가 세노서 담면라. 다 안에서 또도 천세기 드라미슈 짜치 천세나 걸로 델로지 공패배 중미디 다 안에 온식 유진기 기랍드스기 까딘 임베 안에 숨디 남다 남라베스 주르라 대투고 남시나베 까딘 치우 임 시시나베 까딘 쌈십디 배워진 대마시라 자식을 소삽스레 대치를 임베.
It is April and time for the central monastic body to move to the summer residence in Thimphu. This is a tradition that has been observed every year without a break for close to 400 years. The entire monastic body is now ready to leave Punakha, and as tradition demands, the statue of the Shabdrung heads the entourage as if he was still alive, where he would personally lead the procession. The statue now acts as his representative, and every protocol is followed. "400 years after his arrival in Bhutan, Zhabdrung Ngawang Namgyel's legend, words, and legacy continue to live stronger than ever.
Show